welcome to Becoming the Community CEO. I'm your host, Roberto Candelaria. And over the past several years, I've partnered with leaders around the world to build highly engaged and profitable communities. Through this journey, I also discovered the characteristics that these communities had in common, and today, I'm here to share them with you. Together, we'll explore conversations around community building, partnerships, leadership, and profits. These are the core areas to becoming the community CEO. And now, let's jump into this week's episode. Well, hey, y'all, and welcome back to another episode of the show. I'm here today with one of my dear friends, somebody that I fell in love with a long time ago. Well, I should say it seems like 72 years, but in reality, it's been like 3 years that we actually got to know each other. And it is none other than Susan McVea. Now, y'all, here's one of the things that I know about community leaders. So many community leaders started a community based on their passion, based on an idea, or based on how do I help teach more people more about X, and insert your favorite topic there. And then what happens is they're just like, man, how do I make this thing a business? How do I get paid for the work that I do in my community? Or how do I grow it in a way to be able to create the right offers and programs and services that my community would be able to invest in so that I can bring in the team and the resources that I'm looking for? So y'all, Susan has more than $40 million in personal sales. And yeah, that's a big number, y'all. And leading high performance teams and get this, over $600 million in revenue. Now, she's an award-winning sales strategist, a consultant and speaker, and she now helps ambitious entrepreneurs and community leaders as the founder of the Sales Mastery Society and host of the Master the Sales Game podcast. So all of that's awesome, y'all. She also has some other great things we're going to talk about today. So do me a favor. I know you're probably in the car or at home, but you should stop, clap your hands, and like pretend that like Susan's like coming on the stage here, and welcome my dear friend, Susan McVea.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Thank you so much, Roberta. I am super excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad that we get to have this conversation. And so for those of you listening, Susan and I've been meaning to have this conversation for a few months. And if you're anything like us, the past 12 months has been a roller coaster, to say the least. And, the global health crisis and everything that's come along with that, the shifts in business and entrepreneurship and communities have made it where Susan and I found ourselves spending way more time in our communities, serving our people. And we're just like, yeah, we're going to record an episode. And well, here we are. So I'm glad we get to be here. As we kick off, Susan, what is one thing that when you think about your career as a whole and all that you've done with sales and more importantly, just like finding balance and being able to have your spiritual and your religious beliefs and also lead sales teams, what is the one thing that you were just like, man, this is what community means to me?
Wow, that is such a profound question because I don't think I've ever told you this, Roberto. When I actually started my business, it was like a heavenly gift because at the time I didn't know that I had ended a 20-year career, but I had just ended a 20-year career. And after being home for more than 6 months, pretty much isolated because I had post-traumatic stress disorder from a car accident, getting into the car, even just walking outside was challenging. Like it wasn't easy. It was creating a lot of pain. And so the only thing that I could really do was online. And I was seeking community because I was lonely. And for me at the time, I didn't think of myself as building a community. I wanted to be part of somebody else's community. But gosh, I'm the oldest of 3 children. So a natural born leader, you could say. And after a career that was built upon being a leader for others, it was a really hard role for me to put behind. So I quickly created my own group. I wanted to curate conversations with individuals about things that I found interesting and that I was curious about and that were important to me because I really was just lonely. It wasn't really from the perspective of I'm being super strategic and I want to build a marketing campaign or I'm trying to sell you on this. It was just, I want to talk to adults. I want to make sure that my brain is working. I don't want to feel quite so alone or like I'm not a real human being that has real human fears and desires and having a just a genuine conversation with somebody who really understands what it means to live this life in the way that I'm living it right now and to just be encouraged by what I was seeing around me. And that's really where it started. And so I am just grateful because if God had not led me to that moment where I even could think about having a business and using a tool like Facebook that I had never before imagined that I would ever use. Sorry, Mark Zuckerberg, but I was not a fan. I was not a fan, right? And so the fact that I did all of this because I was divinely inspired and led, and it has become the biggest blessing, the biggest gift of my entire life, really, beyond my family, beyond my children, has been probably the biggest surprise ever. Like if you had told me, Roberto, 2015, right before I had my breakdown, if you had told me, Susan, you're going to be on Facebook, you're going to be on Facebook every day. You're going to find people that you like on Facebook. You're going to find people who are paying you to do the thing that you already do in corporate, but doing it in a different way. You're going to be able to talk about your faith and a God and have friendships all over the world. I legitimately would have laughed you down and said, you are like bonkers and super crazy. And I don't know who you are, but you need to walk away or I'm calling the police on you.
I love that story. One of the things that we teach in Profitable Community Academy is really getting into some of the reasons that people join a community. And I think that, sometimes people are so focused on what are the big flashy things that can be done, but they forget about the basic human needs that we all have. And you mentioned a sense of belonging, a place that you could find those peers. And I know, right after my dad passed, I actually found a Facebook group that was a place where a community of people that had just lost a parent. And if you would have told me 2 years ago when my dad passed that I would be opening up to people in a Facebook group about my grief process, I would have been like, okay, nah, y'all are on something because who's gonna air all of that in a public setting? But there was that sense of belonging, there was that community, there was that common life experience, that shared experience, and we were all seeking a solution. Now we were seeking that different ways, but it was just kind of interesting that you said that because I think people think sometimes that community has to mean what are we selling? And sometimes community is just how do we get together to be with other people just like us, sharing the journey with us, experiencing something like us. And so when we talk about you jumping on Facebook and being in communities, not necessarily being strategic about it, like you said, but then noticing people are finding me, people are wanting to buy things from me. What was your thought process as you started to do even more sales online? Because one of the things that some of these listeners may not realize, y'all, when I met Susan a few years ago, one of the things that stuck out to me right away is that she is like had gone out, came into this industry, not knowing anybody. And by industry, I mean like online sales, digital marketing, personal development, teaching sales. And you did 6 figures in 6 months. And I know we've got some community leaders listening being like, I have 100,000 people in my Facebook group and I've not made 6 figures, or I've got, you know, 400,000 followers on Instagram and I haven't made 6 figures. What led to you being able to create 6 figures in 6 months? And how is that possible for other people?
Yeah, so I will say that for me, so I'm an introvert. I'm an extroverted introvert because a lot of folks come up to me and they go, there's no way you're an introvert, because I've learned to be outgoing, and I'm just naturally deeply curious about people. And so one of the first things that I'll do is ask you a bunch of questions. And people don't even realize after, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of spending time with me, that they really have learned almost nothing about me. Like, I've had people come to me and say, I had no idea you have kids. And it's been months. Like, they've known me for months, sometimes years. And they go, what? And it's because I'm so curious that I will find out so much information about other folks. And that's really where this desire came from, of being able to serve people and really be able to understand what it was that they needed. So so first, I'm going to back up and say, yes, I generated 6 months of income, six figures, right? That sounds really sexy, but I want everybody to understand that I had a 20-year runway. I actually had almost a 40-year runway, because my parents are entrepreneurs. This is something that I've been exposed to my entire life. And so although I never considered myself to be a salesperson, I've always been a service person. And as a result, for me, sales is service, and sales is also leadership. And you heard me just share it. Like, as soon as my younger sister was born, she's 2 years younger than me, I was already a leader. I had to lead her, and I had to lead myself. And so this is something, again, that I have continually practiced as I've just been a human. So when I got into the online space and I saw a need, I will tell you that I didn't see the value. And I had a dear friend and client, Lee Min. So I'm giving Lee Min a shout out, as I do all the time, because I think give credit where credit is due, right? And she said to me, Susan, your expertise is in helping high performers. You work with high achievers, people who are, the top of the top, that want to get better. And maybe they're just struggling with sales. And I said, oh, is that it? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, I really want to work with women, because I've worked with men and women, and I could probably do it again, but women really struggle in this area. And I kept seeing this over and over again in these Facebook groups and communities that I was participating in. And simply by reaching out, and yes, that meant that I initiated conversation, which I know sometimes feels scary. But again, I was coming from a place of, do you need my help? Is this something that I could help you with? Are you even somebody that I want to help? Do you see value in what it is that I could do? And as I was doing this direct outreach and being naturally curious, and again, not because I was trying to sell people, I wanted to see, is my service of value to you? And if so, why? And how could I help you if you did actually see it of value? Like, what exactly did you see a value compared to what I wanted to deliver? And was there a meeting of the minds in that capacity? And as I continued having these conversations, and I started to now teach about what it was that I was doing, because as I was learning, I am a huge learner, and I'm very transparent. I would tell people, here's what I'm trying, here's what I'm doing, here's how I'm standing out, here's some of the content that I'm putting together, and people would naturally just reach out. And that's where I was just cultivating conversations from a connection that had already happened about something that may or may not be related to business. It was about something that was deeply personal for me, right? And so I would be talking about my pain journey. I would be talking about my kids and trying to be a good mom as I was trying to navigate this whole world of the online space that was very new to me. I was very honest about the fact that, hey, I don't even know how to hit a Facebook post. Can somebody help me out? Like, did I do this right? And being able to just share, oh my gosh, like, I think I just spammed a whole bunch of people, because I didn't realize that this is what happens when I put 5 posts up in 10 minutes, that everybody on my friend wall sees it. Nobody told me. So all of these things were just out in the open for people to see. And I think it was refreshing for people to have that level of honesty, integrity, vulnerability, and not from a place of, I'm trying to market myself as vulnerable. I just was being real and raw and honest about, I don't know what I'm doing in a lot of areas. I do know what I'm doing in these other areas. I'm sharing my journey and encouraging you to be part of the journey with me and to ask me questions, because I'm happy to just share what I'm doing, what's working and what's not. And as I was doing this, people would just ask me for help. And of course, I mean, I am a sales expert. Once I figured out what I wanted to offer and who I wanted to offer it for, then I started making invitations. I started offering people to work with me and saying, if you're this type of person, then book your call, book a conversation. I have X amount of spots. And so I was able to generate that six figures with a really small audience. I started to grow my Facebook community and cultivate those conversations and start to engage with people on a very personal one-to-one basis. And I think the very first clients that I got were all from my community, but I had less than 100 people the first month that I generated $25,000 in sales. That was with less than 100 people. And I didn't have an email list. I didn't have any connections. Nobody knew who the heck I was. Most of these folks were perfect strangers to me, 4 weeks before that, some 4 days before that. So I have clients who come to me that have massive audiences and they struggle because I think sometimes we focus on the wrong things. And I actually prefer to keep smaller, intimate audiences because I want to know most of the people that I'm connected to. That is very important to me and is part of my value proposition. And I know that as I continue to grow in my business and where God is taking me, that is going to need to change. But I try really hard to make sure that if we've had a conversation, that I know what's happening and I do take the time to respond. I can't get to every single message, but when I first started, they were all personalized messages. I sent them all out and I made sure that I was having a conversation with each and every single person that was part of my community.
So y'all, there was a lot there. Like I was over here taking notes because I like to come back to some things that you said because I think sometimes in our own journeys we can experience something or have this moment and we share it and we're just like, yeah, this is what I went through. But people may not always be able to relate that to themselves. And so if a few things that I heard that I think are key here is, when I mentioned, hey, you came into this space and you did six figures in 6 months and you started it by saying, hey, but I had this runway, of 20 years or 40 years, whatever you want to call it. I had this runway. And so, if you're listening, right, as you come into taking your community and being, yes, a community leader, but saying, how do I become a profitable community leader? Understand you've got the experience of your life experience, your work experience, the experience that you already have a community. You heard when Susan said that when she started, there was no community. And she did her first $25,000 month with less than 100 people. And so those of you that already have a community, that's where this next part comes in. The second thing she said there was, it was important to find out what people wanted, what they saw of value. And if any of y'all worked with us before, y'all know I love the book Ask by Ryan Levesque. And, one of the things he teaches about is how you ask one question to your community. And it could be a simple, question such as, what is your biggest frustration, struggle, or problem around X? And that X is whatever you solve for your community, right? And so if you're a budgeting coach, right, it's just like, what's your biggest frustration with your budget? Or what's your biggest frustration with making sure the light bill's paid on time? And your people will tell you, and I'll even go a step further and say, don't give them multiple choices because you want their answer where they're really at right now. And then the two other things that Susan said, I mean, she said a lot, but two that like really resonated with me were one, just make mistakes, take action, make mistakes because it doesn't got to be pretty or perfect. It's just got to be done. And then when it's done, that's what allows us to be able to move forward, to fine tune things, to optimize those things when we make the mistakes. And so, speaking of mistakes, Susan, what would you say is or are, one or two of the mistakes that you made in your journey to where you are today that had the most profound impact on your life?
There's lots of mistakes, right? And I think for me, every time I think of mistakes, they are learning moments or teachable moments. At least I hope they are, right? Because for me, one of my biggest pet peeves is being ineffective or inefficient. So I never want to make the same mistake twice if I can help it. And as a result, I really do take the time to pay attention to why they may have happened and what I need to learn from them. And I will say that the two biggest mistakes that still have impacted, or they're things that have helped shape the way that I anticipate and participate in my life today. One comes from corporate, actually very early on in my corporate career, and there's multitudes that I could pull from, but these two really are indicative of where I currently am in my life and in my career. So when I first started in corporate and I was finally in an office, right? So that was like, I don't want to be like dealing with the mass herds of clients. I'm going to be in an office and get to like, whoa, Nelly, like you have to get bypassed through somebody else before you can come see me. And I was still going through training, and I had this client come in. And as we were sitting down, he opened an account and went through like the whole process of it. And I thought, okay, there were some things that he answered. Like everything on paper looked correct, all looked perfect, except my spidey sense, like the hairs on the back of my neck, kept rising as we were having this conversation. And I thought, it's odd. I wonder why. And there was just a couple of things that didn't quite make sense. But again, on paper, sounded right, sounded perfect. And it was early on in my career. I had nothing to go by outside of this sense that I had, this gut instinct. And so I kind of brushed it off and I said, nah, it's fine. I'm being overzealous. Only to realize a week later that this same guy who had told me this like far-fetched story had then defrauded the company, had walked away with, at the time, I think it was a few $1,000s, right? And thankfully, I had put all the processes in place in order to protect. But because he got access to all of this stuff, because on paper he looked perfectly fine, no red flags, nothing got like alerted. But there was just something in me that would have put in some extra measures that were above and beyond. But I said, no, Susan, you're overreacting.
Mhm.
Right. And how many times have we done that where there's something that doesn't feel quite right, and then we still say, but we're overreacting, like there's some there, it doesn't make sense for me to do this, and we override our instincts. And that's what I did. And then a week later I found out, and I was devastated because I thought, and I beat myself up over this. Oh my gosh, I could have done this. I could have done that. My manager finally had to say, there is nothing else that you could have done. You followed the exact protocol that you needed to. And so it's okay. Like as a business, we're willing to accept a certain level of risk. But I'm going to tell you that I was devastated because it made me feel like I couldn't trust myself and that I had overridden my own expectations. And so while I did that in a corporate career, when I came into my own business, you would think, well, gosh, Susan, you just said like you like to learn from your own mistakes. Surely you couldn't have repeated this. Au contraire, mon frere. I did the exact same thing. Sorry, my dastardly French there, but because I think sometimes we think that other people know better than us, and yes, there are times where they do. But I'm going to tell you, because I always, when I'm working with clients, I'm very mindful of what is it that's coming up for you, because we need to address it here and now. Because if you're triggered, if there's something that's popping up, and it's going to prevent us from being able to see the full depth and scope of our results. So I was working with a mentor who at the time was very opposite of me, extroverted, massive audience. And it's one of the reasons why I was working with her was because I said, I want to have a bigger platform. I want to have a bigger audience. Like, teach me how you've grown your audience. Because again, I shared with you, audience grown from scratch, very small, very intimate, which at the time was okay. But I, like everybody else, I'm a human being. I was like swayed by, I want the big numbers. I want to help more people. I want to be able to impact the world. How can I do that when I only have a few hundred, or even, I didn't even have 1,000 people? And I thought, I need more. I need more. And she said, okay, I'm going to get you to create an offer. It's going to be $47. Now, Roberto, I had never sold anything at that price point. I had created my business as a boutique consulting firm that was going to be like the Nordstrom or even the Saks Fifth Avenue of sales coaching and consulting, which meant no $47 offer. We were in the thousands. I think the lowest price offer that I had was $197 for 2 weeks. So when she said $47, and I thought, well, in order for me to generate, even what I would sell from one coaching package, it wasn't even, because my price point at that point had started going up. I would need to sell this to at least 100 people, 200 people, really. I knew that based on the conversion numbers, I simply didn't have that kind of traction with the size of audience that I had. Like, I always tell people, a sale is a sale is a sale. If you're going to put in the effort to make one sale at 47, it's pretty much the same at 4,700 or 47,000. And it is. The effort is really the same. It's a different value proposition. And so, against my better judgment, I said, okay, because you're my mentor, but I overrode my gut in saying my numbers don't hold true. My value proposition doesn't make sense. And although I did make sales, I certainly did not make 100 sales. I don't even think I made 30 sales. And so when we sat down, my mentor and I, and she was flabbergasted. She was like, well, it doesn't make sense at all to me. Like, why didn't that work? And I realized that I needed to step in again, same thing as what I had learned in corporate, right? But I think sometimes we just think, because I've hired somebody, because I'm working for somebody else, they surely must know better than me. And what I've realized is that nobody knows better than me for me. And I need to start from that place, right? And that anytime that I have counted on myself, I may not see the full fruit of my success, but I always get a better result than when I go against my gut, when I go against my intuition, when I go against the thing that I know to be true for me. And so, as hard as it is now to do that, I fight for it. And I fight for my clients to be able to do that, to be able to justify where their positions are, and to heal and deal with the things that come up that prevent them from being able to be aligned. Because I think that's where the true growth happens. And that's where the true success happens, regardless of what the dollar amount may look like on the other end.
Oh, that was good. That was good. I think that all of us experience that in life, and that I can tell you, for at least for me, it took me more than two times to realize that what was going on. And so, as you were in more alignment with yourself, and were able to be like, hey, you know what? This is me. This is what I feel. Whether you call it the spidey senses, or the goosebumps, or whatever happens, right? The thing that lets you know this is right, or this doesn't feel right, but I don't quite know what yet. As people go out and create offers for their communities, or create something to create that invitation for their community, one of the things we hear from community leaders, talking about that spidey sense, right, is some of them would say, "Oh, Roberto, I never started this to sell them anything. I started this to serve them. I never started this because this was going to be my business, but now it's taking more time than I spend in the 40-hour work week. But I don't want to make money from them. I don't want to feel like I'm always going to them asking for $1 or asking for $20. When these community leaders are saying, how do I go from a place of I've been in service to being paid for that service? What are maybe two or three tips you would have for them in either making that transition to developing that product, or if they already have that product, how to actually feel comfortable selling that and offering that invitation to their community?
Yeah, so this is a fabulous question. I hope everybody here is ready to take notes, because I think this is a question that comes up over and over and over again, right? Because I work with a lot of servant leaders. I am a person of service. And so, how do you do this without feeling like, oh, is this a bait and switch? Like, I'm only going to help people who are willing to pay me. No, here's the thing: if you currently have paying clients, then you have already a benchmark of here's what I go into detail with people who pay me for this. That kind of one-on-one, customized sorts of information should only be reserved for your paying clients. So when Roberto and I have this kind of conversation at large, I can give generalized information that could hopefully help as many people as possible. But if you're going to now reach out as a result of me being on this conversation here and say, okay, this was great, Susan, but I'm trying to sell blank. And here's my biggest struggle is ABC. What should I do? Here's what I would say. That's a fantastic question, Roberto. And typically, this is something that I work with my clients privately on. I'm happy to have a conversation to see what that might look like in the context of us working together. Here's a link so that you can get booked on my calendar. If you can't find something that suits you, feel free to let me know. Or if you prefer to take a look at one of the courses or products that I might have available that could serve you in a different way, let me know and I'll share a resource with you. So it doesn't have to be icky. And again, you're in charge. So it's your boundary and it's your leadership. If you keep training people to treat you as if you are an ATM with no expiry, like cha-ching, 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 ask me a question, ask me a question, ask me a question. And every time I go and push the button, you're going to spit out an answer. Well, guess what's going to happen? They're going to keep coming to the ATM of Susan so that every time I have a sales question, cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. So I don't answer those questions because I have so much free information. And I'm going to guess that you probably do too in some way, shape, or form. You direct people to your free advice. And if they have more questions, then you direct people to the next step. That could be a paid product, your book, a webinar, a workshop, a paid consult, working with you one-on-one so that they get on a sales call. Whatever the next step is, that's up to you to decide because you're the expert in your own business. But you cannot allow them to keep dipping at the well and then wonder why the well is empty. That is up to you.
Ooh, an empty well and an empty ATM. Very, very, very good examples there. And so, y'all, I hope y'all took some notes. As Susan and I begin to wrap up today, two things. Number one, Susan, if people like to read, what is a book that you would recommend for them that's helped you?
Roberta, I was saying, gosh, I have so many different books. I will say that for the context of the conversation and what we've been talking about, I want everybody to read Pat Flynn, Superfans. Pat Flynn, Superfans. I'm going to tell you that if you're struggling to build a community of superfans, not just any community, but you're also trying to figure out how do I make money from that community, Pat Flynn has nailed it. It's basically a blueprint for how to make money with a small but mighty audience without any complicated marketing or funnels or tech or any of the stuff that we allow to get in the midst of the excuses of why we can't make money doing the thing that we love while serving people at the same time. It is phenomenal. And if you follow the exercises, this is not just a book to sit on the coffee table. It is a workbook. There's exercises at the end of each chapter. And if you do them, there is no way that you would not be making money in your business.
Ooh, I love that. So, Pat Flynn Superfans. And then where can people connect with you more?
Yeah, so I am across all social media channels as at Susan McVea. My last name is a little bit tricky, so I will spell it out for you. It's MCVEA. And I'd love for folks to get my six-figure blueprint because we talked a little bit about it. We didn't go into a ton of detail, and I know that there's often questions. It's not super complicated. And if you want to know the exact three-step process, like three-step system that I use, there's bits and pieces in there, but I did this when I first started my business, and it's still something that I do now today, and I help clients with. You can grab that free resource at susanmcvea.com/Roberto, and I will walk you through the exact steps that I took in order to generate those first 6 figures in my business.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here today, Susan. And in closing, any last words of wisdom, advice, of sarcasm, of just cheerful joy that you might bring to people today?
I think that we often overcomplicate things. If you listen to my podcast, Master the Sales Game, I keep things as real as possible. And I think that the main thing here that I want everybody to understand, and I'm going to give you an extra book, okay, for those of you that are keeners. To Sell is Human by Daniel Pink. And the reason why is because as a human being, we are all in the business of sales. We are all trying to help other people make decisions. And if you're not the one guiding them to make the decisions, then somebody else is guiding you, whether or not you even realize this. And the more that we know that there's nothing wrong with you in order to be able to create success in your business, because I'm tired of these gurus and experts that are making us feel crummy about the way that we are building businesses, the way that we are servicing our people, and that we feel like in order to do what we need to do, that we are missing something, that there's something inherently wrong with us. I work with people who are good at what they do. They're great at what they do, and they just need a little bit more polishing on their diamond. So if there's anything that I can leave you with, it's that you should run for the hills from anybody who makes you feel like you are less than in order for them to feel more than. And that if they're saying to you that you must work with them in order to get to your next level, that is simply not true. I believe that everybody can get to where they want to be. It just may take longer. And as long as you're okay with the timeline and the trajectory and the end goal, that no matter what, because you are a human being, because you are destined for greatness, and because you have a heart of service, that there's no doubt in my mind that you will be able to do what you want to do. It just might be on a different timeline, and that's okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you were able to take the nuggets away from today. I know one of the big ones that I relived listening to Susan there here at the very end in her closing statement was, do the thing that is right for you, because this is just all part of the journey. And another day on the show, I'll have to share about how I learned that mistake by investing in a program that I knew I was not ready for, but I was convinced that that was the only way that I was going to be able to build a brand. So thanks so much for hanging out with us today. Be sure to visit Susan on all social media at Susan McVea, and also at susanmcvea.com/Roberto. Y'all have a great day. Bye-bye. Well, howdy, and thanks for listening to another episode of the show. Hey, if you'd love to stay in contact with us, visit robertoteaches.com to connect with me on social media, learn about our Facebook groups and other places that we can connect to help you on your journey to becoming the community CEO. And if you're loving the show, do me a favor. I'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give us a review on iTunes or your favorite podcast listening platform.